everyone, and welcome back to the next episode of Tilly. I am your host, Marisa Zeppieri. Most of you already know me as LupusChick. Tilly is brought to you by the Lupus Foundation of New England. It is a weekly episodic series. Every Tuesday night, we interview anyone from physicians and nutritionists to psychologists to people actually living with lupus, which is what we're doing tonight. So many of you here probably already know Emmitt, who is the founder of Male Lupus Warriors. If you don't, you're not going to want to miss this interview. I'm actually talking to him today because he got COVID, and we spoke while he was in the hospital getting antibodies. And we get questions like this every day into LupusChick, into Lupus Foundation of New England, about people that are diagnosed and what's worked for other people, what hasn't. Have we have any personal experience? Have we tried the antibodies? I just feel like it's so crucial for us to kind of hear someone else's journey that actually has lupus. So Emmitt, thank you so much for being with us today.
I appreciate being here. Thank you for having me.
Well, you're one of our favorites. And you look so, I hate saying this, right? Because we hear it all the time. You don't even look sick, but you look great, because I know that you literally just had COVID. So I want to talk to you just sort of about that entire experience. And I know that, and we can kick it off here. Originally, you thought it was an issue with the lupus. So if you can kind of just start us off and tell us what you were originally feeling like that led to the COVID diagnosis.
Absolutely. So, I my normal routine is I'm pretty busy during the day with a lot of advocacy work that I do with consistent Zooms, and of course, I caregive and take care of my parents. So I had a normal night laying down. That morning, however, wasn't a normal morning for me. I ended up waking up due to the migraines that I do get periodically because of a brain disease, which is part of lupus again. But came with the migraines was also very bad joint pains. The joint pains I don't usually get as bad as I got this one morning, so something to me was up. But then when I realized it was, trying to get up and get out past the joint pains, the fatigue was just was off the charts. Marissa, I feel fatigue at times, but again, nothing to keep me down where I can't really get out of bed. I knew I had a doctor's appointment coming up in the next 2 days, so I decided to call my doctor and ask them if they wanted me to do labs prior. Usually I just go in and they'll see if they need to do labs based on, but I just trying to be proactive on it. And she, before even answering me about that, when I told her my symptoms, she told me I need to go in and get checked for COVID. And I was telling her that I don't think it's COVID because I don't have no symptoms that I've read about knowing about COVID. I had taste, I had smell, lungs seemed to be fine, no problems with a scratchy throat, nothing like that at all. Just lupus symptoms, joint pains, fatigue, and my migraines. So she kept arguing with me, and of course I can't argue with my doctor nowadays, so I decided to go ahead and put that part to rest, thinking let me go in and let me see if they could rule that out. Cool, then I just go on with my day. I ended up going to, and I'm gonna tell you how bad it is here in California, San Diego. I got turned away from the first emergency room. They told me they're just way overpacked right now with COVID patients, and they suggest I do not come here. Just like that. I ended up turning around, going to another ER, which was a lot bigger. I ended up getting in, and then one of the things that kind of got to me was when I got to the counter and told them that I have symptoms of what my doctor might think might be COVID. And I had to let them know that I'm immune compromised. And so they pretty much kind of like rushed me to the top and got me in pretty quick, just saying that alone. So when they got me in, they did end up, of course, doing the test first in primary because that was the big thing that's going on now. And sure enough, about an hour and a half later, not just the emergency room doctor, but the nurse, along with two other doctors, came in like, okay, are you guys ganging up on me? Like, what is this about? They all came in to tell me that I was positive, and then to tell me that antibody infusions are a thing that we're doing, and you are an eligible candidate now. So keep in mind, Marissa, I didn't hear much about these antibody infusions at all. I didn't hardly know anything about them. And when they told me about it, yes, it sounded good. However, they gave me an hour window to decide. Now, it was one of those things where it's like, okay, I need to research first. I need to talk. That's when me and you kind of talked about it at that time. And, even with not enough information, I decided to try to get more of a widespread information. And with a lot of people I know in the communities, I did put out a social media post to just get people's opinions. I said I was asking for a friend because I didn't want to alarm and say that I was in the hospital for COVID. And the responses that I got were pretty much overwhelming in regards to that question alone. So with everything that was coming in, more good than bad. Very little bad, more good. And if anything, people were just very curious on it because they've heard about it. So when the doctor told me about the time frame that I had, I also spoke to my father, and me and him had a good talk. And I was convinced at that point to where if I'm not sure what COVID will do because of my immune compromised, system, because I have, lupus and the other diseases I have as well with it, I caught it early enough to where I can't let this get out of hand, thinking that COVID can really do a lot of damage. So I decided to do the antibody infusion. When I did go ahead.
Oh no, so I was just going to say there are multiple types of antibody infusions at this point. I've had family members that have gotten Regeneron and have recovered, within a few days they were sort of back in action. Tell me about the antibody infusion that you received. I can't pronounce this one.
Sotrovimab is what it is. Sotrovimab. So they gave me the paperwork on that first to read up on it, which I really appreciated, and I did. And I'm a mindful person, and everything I read on there, of course, is what we want to hear as patients. And so I took the chance, and I told the doctors, let's go ahead and do it. The infusion itself took maybe only about 20 to 30 minutes at that. And then they gave me about an hour to hour and a half to just make sure I didn't have any type of reaction from it. If anything, going back into an isolated room for the wait time after the infusion, I feel fine. I've already sitting up in my bed. I'm already on my phone, texting people. I'm not feeling anything at all. So the nurse came in and asked me how I felt. I told her I felt fine. She said, well, let's give it at least 20, 30 more minutes. So I did. I abided by everything. And then they asked me if I had somebody to take me home. I told them no, I drove here. I could drive home. I mean, mentally, I was 100%. I just didn't know until I got up if I was physically or not. But I'm going to tell you, when I got up, I felt like I could have walked home probably. I felt fine. I felt really good. So I
Wow.
did. I ended up driving home that night.
Wow. Well, obviously everybody's story with COVID is different. I just think it's so important, especially right now, because we're in this time frame where cases are ramping up. I know they are here in New York and out by you in California and whatnot, in so many areas. And I think a lot of us have physicians that will send us for these antibodies if we do actually test positive for COVID. And I know, like any procedure, anything that we go through as lupus patients, the first time you have to have it done can be very worrisome, right? And make you anxious. So I think it's really important to hear other people's stories. And I know that you got the infusion, you were home that night, and I remember checking on you, I think the next day, and your symptoms hadn't progressed to anything worse. And that was their hope in giving you the antibodies, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. Their description was that the COVID that I was diagnosed with, the purpose of the antibodies is to go in and assist my body in fighting the virus itself. And so again, when I went home, and keep in mind, when I went home, I still knew that I was diagnosed. So I took it easy. I didn't try to feel just because I feel good at the time doesn't mean to go out and test your limits. That
Right.
means that you feel good at the time, but yet you still were diagnosed positive. So I had to go home, lay it down, and just make sure that I was prepared in case something happened, if I needed to call to get assistance, if I needed, somebody nearby, or if I had to go back to the hospital, and all that was prepared. Luckily for me, that night, I slept really good and had a good night. I did not wake up with the symptoms I did the day before.
Wow.
Lupus felt like it was at bay.
Wow. Very interesting. Well, see, these stories are so important, and I know within a couple of days, once I think you felt back to your normal self, right? We have our normal self. I've
Yeah.
seen you online, sort of back in action. I know you were at the beach. Obviously, not right after, keeping that isolation period. I know that you take care of your parents, so I remember you were saying that you were just trying to sort of sit tight so that you obviously didn't get them sick. I'm curious, in the hospital, were they able to tell you what variant you had?
No, I had asked that specifically because of the strains of the Delta, which is, I know, the one that a lot of people suffered from. And then the new form of the Omicron, I was heard that it was like 3 times more contagious, but yet less severe. So,
Right.
and to me, I assumed that that was it because as lupus patients, we always need to be masked, we always need to wash, we always need to be sanitized. And I went by that. And it just baffled me that it was because I don't recall any chance or situation where I was, near any crowd or anybody with it. So when I asked, did they know? They said they didn't. But I'll tell you what my doctor said just last week after they found out I was negative. He thought that it was Delta because the sotrovimab antibody infusion specifically works for Delta. And
Hmm.
he thinks that my fast recovery could have been because it worked for me and it fought it off. Now,
Well,
that's speculation, of course, but literally now, and I'm going to tell you this, and my third day of having being positive, because how good I felt that day, I did decide to leave the house, but to go for a walk. And I went by myself. I went early in the morning. I wasn't around anybody. But Marissa, I covered 6.5 miles in a walk. So that told me I was physically okay to do that walk. But that doesn't mean it was okay to go out. And I just did it to test to see where I was and how I felt. I felt good. Now
well,
I know that I can be fine. But whatever however it did for me, something worked because I was up and at it. And keep in mind, I still take my same autoimmune suppressant medications because of my lupus and because of my transplants. I also take my organ rejection medications as well. But I felt fine.
well, I'm so glad that everything worked out for you and they were able to give you the antibodies. You were able to find a hospital that, could take you and see you that quickly, and
Right.
that you have a doctor that is that proactive. I mean,
Yes.
sometimes, like I really do think I had COVID a couple weeks ago and I could not get an appointment anywhere here for a PCR test. The closest one was almost 2 hours away and there was no way I could drive myself there. So,
Wow.
it's crazy because I'm in New York, right? So you think, well, in a bigger city, it's got to be easier, and
Right.
that's not always the case.
Right.
So I'm so glad that you were able to get in. And I think it's really important that we hear stories like this. Obviously, if anyone here has any questions for Emmitt, feel free to put them in the comments below, and he'll either get to them, later on, or he'll come back to the thread and see. Because obviously, Emmitt, some people don't watch this live; they might watch it later tonight, or tomorrow or next week. So
Right.
I want to switch gears a little bit while I have you here. So I've known you now for a couple of years. Emmett's making a lot of moves in the lupus community. I would love for you to just tell everyone, remind them, and especially for those who are meeting you for the first time, a little bit about yourself and about Male Lupus Warriors and your dream team, and anything else that you want to share.
Absolutely, and I appreciate the opportunity for this. So, my name is Emmitt Henderson III. I am the CEO of Male Lupus Warriors Newly Corporation, nonprofit organization. So, I started my journey, when I was diagnosed in 1995. But in 2019, when it took me out of work because of the severity of my disease, I decided to advocate and put out there what wasn't available for me as a man with lupus. And that was as simple as support groups. That was simple as having another guy out there with an autoimmune disease that can cope with what I coped with. It wasn't there in my time coming up with lupus. Or maybe the stigma and the man in me didn't have me look for it. There was a lot of things of why. I just decided to start my own so I can help other men with any type of autoimmune disease kind of get through what they're going through. And then, of course, meeting all of the 90+% women that have lupus is just a blessing that just adds on to it. I became a nonprofit in the late part of 2021, but with everything that I was doing, I plan on using this 2022 to expand my operation in regards to helping more people in the community. That is the purpose of my nonprofit, is to help people in financial situations burdened by their disease and how can I help you get through that? So once I start to market and get some donations, then I will be a force out there that will be helping people. I end up meeting another guy with lupus in the East Coast. I am here in California in the West. And it was a little discouraging trying to advocate and for to help men because I didn't think there was that many men out there with this disease until I met another guy named Dion Langley. He has his own organization called #BeatLupus. And when I saw him, we both had the same goal. So we both clicked and was just advocating for lupus on a male's perspective and from a male's point of view. We ended up combining our efforts to become an organization in addition to our regular organizations, and we became the Lupus Dream Team, where we kind of bring a whole different format to this advocacy game. And we're on a roll, Marissa. We're reaching out to so many people. We have a support group with men only with lupus that our January kicked off really, really well. I mean, guys that were just opening up and talking that told us they would never have done that if they did not have our space. So we encourage anybody with any type of autoimmune disease. We have support groups on the outside of men only, but we have the ones for men only. Refer them to me. I would love to talk to them and show them not how to do it, but give them the tools because I know they can do it themselves to get where they need to be. So with that said, I just got to be very proud of everything. And then meeting people like you, Marissa, and seeing your progression and with Lupus Chicks, it just inspires me because you guys are the platform of lupus and we're just trying to be a voice as males to speak up as well.
Well, I am so proud of you. Like you and I have had lupus for decades. And I know, and when we were first diagnosed, like there was none of this, especially for men. Like I didn't meet the first man that I knew with lupus for about 8 years after I was diagnosed. And they didn't want to talk about it. They didn't want anyone to know. I only know because their parents told me and shared the story with me. And I think it was, they were so nervous that they were just starting their career and they didn't want it to, there was just that shame involved, which I understand. I felt the same way just because I only knew one other person when I was diagnosed 21 years ago. And when people see you, they're like, what do you have? And is that contagious? And, women are obviously a lot more outspoken than men. We use a lot more words every day. But we need men like you in the community. And if you know any males, anyone here that's listening, send them over to Emmitt. Definitely go to Male Lupus Warriors. And that was the other thing. I wanted to make sure that you were able to give everyone your social media handles or your website so they can come and follow you as well.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm on the social media. My website's still under construction. I'm just getting all this put together now that the nonprofit is in effect now. But you can find me on social media at Male Lupus Warriors. On Facebook under my name, under Emmitt Henderson. I'm also on Twitter under Male Lupus Warriors. And my email is malelupuswarriors@gmail.com. Pretty simple.
That's awesome. Well, definitely go follow Emmitt. He is a force, and we're going to be seeing, I'm sure, a lot more of you. And I'm so glad that you are feeling better, back to your normal lupus self. And I'm just so thankful for you to be here and just share it. There's so many different types of stories, obviously, with lupus and COVID. But because antibodies are seemingly becoming so much more like the regimen that they're using, I think it's just really important that people hear, the process that you went through and that you came out okay.
Yes, yes.
Oh,
And if I
thank
could
you.
also throw in there, it's you got to listen to your body. I mean, that day, that morning when I woke up with the pains, I addressed it right away because it was out of the ordinary for me. But sometimes I'm kind of stubborn, like a lot of us probably are, to where I feel it and I keep thinking I'll be okay. I got things to do that's more important, or this or that. There's no telling what could have happened if I just did not go in and get this treatment. I mean, you can't predict anything, but if you know something's going on, listen to your body and take action. Be proactive and help yourself. You don't want to make things worse if you can avoid it.
Absolutely. Well, if there's one thing I think we're all learning over the last 2 years is COVID is unpredictable and it's so different in every person, just like lupus. You and I
Yes.
both have lupus and we have completely different health issues, like when it comes to the lupus. So that's just life today. But I want to thank everyone for being here on this episode of Tilly. definitely come back next Tuesday night. And if you want to watch any of our old episodes, because we're in season 8 right now, so that means we have 42 other episodes, go back into our videos either on LupusChick or on the Lupus Foundation of New England's Facebook page, and all the videos are posted there. And we actually have an old interview of Emmitt sharing your story and when you got the transplant, and just sort of how, you know, the whole lupus journey began. So if you want to learn more about Emmitt, go and check out his older video on the TILLY series. And Emmitt, I just want to thank you again. You're amazing.
I thank you and for everything you do as well. And I love the part that the fact that we can speak out as warriors, as advocates, and spread to the community. So thank you for having me. I really appreciate you.
Thanks, Emmitt. Thank you everyone
Thank you.
for watching, and I hope you have a great day. Take care.